It was almost 10 at night when my doorbell rang for the fourth time that month. I paused the TV, stared at the door, and felt that familiar knot in my stomach that had become routine. I already knew exactly who would be on the other side. 2 police officers, looking just as tired and embarrassed as before. I opened the door slowly, trying to guess what the excuse would be this time. There they were, both of them standing in the hallway, silent for a moment, like they couldn't believe they had to do this again. One of them took a breath and asked in that same polite, rehearsed tone, "Good evening, sir. We received another noise complaint from this apartment. Do you mind if we come in and take a look?" I stepped aside and let them in. The living room was quiet. The TV paused, lights low. No party, no loud music, no drunk people yelling. I was alone on the couch, finishing an episode after a long day of work. While they looked around, one quick glance at the room was enough to see there was nothing going on. All I could think was, how can someone call the police 4 times in 1 month for absolutely nothing and still think that's normal? One of the officers checked the other rooms and came back to the living room. "Look, man, again, there's really nothing going on here. We have to show up when there's a call. You know how it is." I nodded, feeling half ashamed, half angry. "I promise I'm not doing anything crazy. Somebody's really overreacting." The officer gave me a look that was somewhere between sympathy and annoyance. "Well, officially the caller is anonymous, but it's always the same person, and they're persistent." The moment he said that, my stomach flipped. I didn't have hard proof, but everything pointed to one person, my next-door neighbor. The woman who seemed to be born to police everyone else's life. The same neighbor who complained if I closed my door too hard. The same one who glared at me if I walked down the hallway while on the phone. The same one who had already made passive-aggressive comments about noise when I was just moving a chair. I thanked the officers, apologized for them being bothered again, and closed the door, exhausted. I leaned my back against the door and slid down until I was almost sitting on the floor. I wasn't a criminal. I wasn't throwing parties every night, but I felt exactly like that. The problem neighbor of the building, the one people whispered about when I walked by. I started to be afraid of doing anything inside my own home. I thought twice before walking too loud, before laughing, even before closing a drawer at night. It felt like my apartment wasn't really mine anymore, like every tiny sound could turn into another phone call to the police. That night, after the door closed and the silence came back, something in me shifted. I realized this wasn't just a neighbor issue anymore. It wasn't just a picky lady. Someone was using the police as a weapon against me, to control me, intimidate me, and turn me into the villain of the building. And as much as I hate conflict, one thing became very clear. If my neighbor wanted to play by the rulebook, then for the first time, I was ready to play that game to the very end. What she didn't know was that the same rulebook she loved to throw in my face was about to become the very thing that turned the whole building against her. But before telling you how I used the condo rules against the neighbor who kept calling the cops on me, I need to go back a little and explain how it all started. Because at first, she didn't look like a villain at all. She looked like just another strict neighbor, and that's exactly what made me let my guard down and let the situation go way too far. When I first moved into that building, I genuinely thought I'd found peace. It was a small condo, nothing fancy, but it was clean, quiet, and organized. The kind of place where people nod in the elevator, say good morning, and then mind their own business. For me, that apartment was more than just a place to sleep. I worked from home. My living room was my office, my bedroom was my recharge zone, and those few square meters were supposed to be my safe space. All I wanted was a calm place to work during the day, watch a show at night, and maybe have a friend over once in a while. Nothing crazy. The first time I saw my neighbor, I was still carrying moving boxes. She was standing in the hallway, arms crossed, staring at the mess like it personally offended her. Middle-aged, hair tied back, the kind of expression that says, "I'm already annoyed and you just got here." I tried to be friendly. "Hi, how are you? I'm the new neighbor in 304. She didn't smile, didn't even pretend to. "Yeah, I just hope you're not loud. We have very clear rules here." I laughed awkwardly. "No worries, I work from home. I'm quiet." She nodded, but the look in her eyes said she was already cataloging every word I'd just said. Back then, I didn't realize it, but that little line about clear rules would become the soundtrack of my life in that building. At first, it was just small things. One afternoon, I left an empty box outside my door for a few minutes while I reorganized the bedroom. When I came back, there was a note taped to it. "Hallways are not storage. Read the rules." Signed, Your Neighbor. Another time, I accidentally closed the door a bit too hard while carrying groceries. From the other side of the wall, her voice came sharp and loud. "Some people here don't know what quiet means." I took a deep breath and let it go. Honestly, in the beginning, I thought it was almost funny. I told myself, okay, she's just one of those people who take condo rules way too seriously. If I'm careful, it'll be fine. I even tried to be extra nice. One day, I found her in the elevator with several bags of groceries. "Do you need a hand with those?" She didn't even look at me. "No, I just need you to respect the quiet hours." I could have snapped back. I could have asked her what noise she was even talking about, but I swallowed it and stayed quiet. Keeping the peace felt easier than starting a war. So I started adjusting my life around her. No shoes left by the door, no talking on the phone near the entrance, closing the door as if it were glass. I changed my behavior inside my own home just to avoid problems. But then, something started to feel off. I began to notice a pattern. Every time I opened my door, I'd hear hers a few seconds later, the lock turning, the peephole shifting, like she was always there, listening, just waiting for a reason to complain. One evening, I invited a friend over. No party, no music, just the two of us talking in the living room, laughing a little bit louder now and then. After maybe 40 minutes, there was a sharp knock on my door. I opened it. She was standing there, arms crossed, that same cold stare. "You do know this isn't a bar, right? The walls are thin. I can hear everything." My friend went silent. I apologized, explained there was no music, just conversation. She cut me off. "If I have to call someone to handle this, I will. Don't make me repeat myself." Then she turned around and walked away, leaving that threat hanging in the hallway. Something changed that night. It stopped feeling like a neighbor who just likes things quiet. It started feeling like someone who wanted control. Control over when I could talk, laugh, exist in my own apartment. I began walking on eggshells. Every laugh felt dangerous. Every clink of dishes in the sink sounded too loud in my head. Any time I dragged a chair, I held my breath and waited for a knock. And despite all that effort, despite doing everything I could to avoid trouble, it didn't matter. Because when people like her realize they can push you around, they don't stop. They escalate. And that's exactly what she did. Because when the hallway complaints and passive-aggressive comments weren't enough for her, she decided to bring someone else into our little problem. That was the moment she stopped just being the strict neighbor, and she became the neighbor who called the police on me for the very first time. The night my neighbor threatened to call someone if I didn't stay quiet, I honestly thought she was bluffing. Annoying? Yes. Capable of dragging authorities into it? I didn't think so. I was wrong. The first time the police showed up, it was a Saturday afternoon around 4 o'clock. I was in the living room installing a shelf on the wall. Basic stuff. A drill, a few holes, long pauses between them so I wouldn't bother anyone too much. All of it during normal daytime hours. In the middle of one of those pauses, the doorbell rang. I opened the door and saw 2 officers standing there. "Good afternoon, sir. We received a complaint about loud noise and possible disturbance coming from this apartment. Can we come in and check?" My heart dropped. Disturbance? Over a few drill holes in the wall? I let them in, showed them the tools, the half-mounted shelf, the boxes still unpacked from moving in. No party, no shouting, no chaos. They looked around and one of them said, "Honestly, this doesn't look like anything out of the ordinary. We still have to respond to the call, but you're clearly within normal limits here." I apologized anyway, even though I hadn't broken a single rule. They left, and I closed the door slowly, feeling my chest tight and heavy. That was the first time I felt like I was being treated as a problem for doing something everyone does when they move in. A few minutes later, I heard her door open, footsteps in the hallway, then her voice, loud enough to echo. Some people here don't understand respect. Good thing there are still residents who know how to get things handled properly. She never tagged me, never wrote my apartment number, but everyone knew who had just received a visit from the police. I could practically feel the shift. Next time I stepped into the elevator, people were too polite. Smiles that didn't reach their eyes, short greetings, quick glances that slid away the second I looked back. My own home started to feel like a glass box. Every move I made, every sound, I imagined her listening through the wall, phone in hand, ready to dial again. Still, somehow, things found a way to get worse. The third visit from the police came on a Sunday morning around 10 a.m. I was alone, wearing headphones, listening to music at a normal volume while washing dishes. No guests, no shouting, no reason at all for anyone to think there was a disturbance. And yet, the doorbell rang. I took off my headphones, already knowing what I'd see when I opened the door. 2 officers. Again. "Good morning, sir. We've received another complaint about loud noise and possible disturbance from this apartment." This time, I didn't even try to hide how exhausted I was. "Look, this is the 3rd time. I'm not throwing parties. I don't have people over. I'm literally just existing. Is there anything I can do? Because this is making it impossible to live here." One of the officers, older than the others who had come before, looked at me for a long moment. "Between you and me, start writing things down. Times, what you're doing, everything. Because from what we're seeing, this looks less like a noise issue and more like harassment." That word stuck in my head long after they left. Harassment. Later that day, I stepped out to take the trash down. As soon as I opened my door, I heard hers. She was there, waiting, pretending to just happen to be in the hallway. She looked me up and down and said, loud and clear, "Hopefully they finally did something this time. Some people only learn when it hits their wallet." I didn't answer. Not because I couldn't, but because I realized something important in that moment. Anything I said could be twisted, exaggerated, turned into a new complaint. She didn't want peace. She wanted control. She wanted a villain. And in her head, that villain was me. I went back inside, closed the door gently, and just stood there in the silence of my own living room. For the first time, instead of asking what I was doing wrong, I started asking what she was getting away with. If I was being accused of breaking the rules over and over again, maybe it was time to find out what those rules actually said. And more importantly, whether the woman who loved to quote them so much was really following them herself. That's when the idea started to form. If she wanted to live by the rulebook, I was going to read every single page, and that decision would change everything. After that 3rd visit from the police, I was done feeling helpless. I'd been quiet, respectful, careful, and it still wasn't enough. If my neighbor was going to weaponize the rules against me, then I needed to know exactly what those rules actually said. The next day, I went down to the building office and spoke to the manager. "Hey, could you send me the full condo rulebook and, if possible, the last few minutes meetings as well?" He raised an eyebrow, curious, but didn't push. "Sure, I'll email everything this afternoon." When the documents arrived, I printed them out, stapled them, and spread them across my kitchen table. It felt like studying for an exam, except this time the subject was my sanity.
I started with the section on noise. There it was, in plain, boring legal text. Quiet hours clearly defined at night. Reasonable noise allowed during the day. Specific permission for basic repairs and drilling during daytime hours on weekdays and Saturdays. In other words, using a drill at 4 in the afternoon on a Saturday, completely allowed. I hadn't broken a single rule, not once. I kept reading. The rulebook didn't just talk about noise, it covered everything. Hallways could not be blocked by personal items. No furniture, rugs, or large decor were allowed to obstruct common areas. Cars had to be parked fully inside the painted lines of their own spots. Pets weren't allowed to cause constant noise that disturbed other residents. Complaints were supposed to be handled first through the building management and only escalated if there was real ongoing non-compliance. And as I read, something clicked. Because my neighbor, the self-appointed guardian of the rules, she broke half them. Her big decorative rug stretched out into the hallway. She had a massive plant sitting right next to her door, stealing space from the passage. Her car was always parked crooked, leaning into the neighboring spot. And her dog barked hysterically early in the morning when she left and again late night when she got home. Meanwhile, she was calling the police on me over a shelf, a work call, and dishwashing with headphones on. The more I read, the more my anger turned into something else. Focus. She had spent months trying to paint me as the inconsiderate neighbor who didn't respect the rules, but on paper, she was the one treating the building like it was her personal property. For the first time, I stopped feeling like I was on trial and started realizing I had a case. I decided I wasn't going to fight her with shouting, insults, or petty behavior. No, if she wanted to fight with rules, then rules was exactly what I was going to use. Not by bending them, but by following them more carefully than anyone else in that entire building. That night, I closed the rulebook, stacked the papers neatly, and made a decision. I was done defending myself. From that moment on, I was going to start documenting everything. Her rug in the hallway? Picture. Her plant blocking the passage? Picture. Her car parked over the line? Picture. Her dog barking hysterically early in the morning when she left and again late night when she got home. Time, date, and a recorded audio clip. Nothing creepy, nothing invasive, just clear, objective evidence of what anyone could see and hear in the common areas every single day. At the same time, inside my apartment, I tightened things even more. TV volume down, headphones on calls and movies, furniture dragged only during safe hours, no visitors late at night. If she tried to accuse me again, there would be nothing real for her to use. And if she kept pushing, she'd only prove the harassment. Week by week, my little folder of evidence grew thicker. Rug photos from different days, the same plant creeping further into the hallway, the same car always taking more than its own space, the same barking pattern over and over again. Until one day, I looked at the pile of documents spread across my table and realized I wasn't just collecting random pictures and notes anymore. I had a file, a proper case, a story backed by timestamps, rules, and cold facts. And there was only one logical next step. I needed to put all of that in the hands of someone who had the power to make it official. Not the police, not the group chat, the building management, the condo board. Because if she wanted to drag my name through the building for breaking the rules, then it was time for her to see what it felt like to be the one under the spotlight. The plan was simple. Take my neatly organized file, walk into the manager's office, and start a process she would never see coming. The neighbor who loved rules so much was about to face them. For real.
The next morning, I slipped my folder into my backpack and headed down to the building office. No drama, no confrontation in the hallway. Just a quiet walk with months of frustration printed on paper. The condo manager was sitting behind his desk, going through some invoices when I walked in. "Got a minute?" He waved me in. "Sure, what's going on?" I sat down, placed the folder on the table, and opened it. I need to talk to you about an ongoing harassment situation, and I want to do it the right way, by the book. That got his attention. I slid the first few pages toward him. Dates, times, short descriptions. Then the photos. Her rug cutting into the hallway, her plant blocking part of the passage, her car consistently parked over the line, intruding into the neighboring space. Screenshots of group messages where she vaguely attacked certain residents on our floor right after the police had been at my door. I explained everything calmly. The police have come to my apartment 3 times now. Each time they found nothing. No parties, no violations. And yet the calls keep happening. Meanwhile, the person making those calls is breaking several rules listed in the condo regulations. I pulled out a printed copy of specific sections of the rulebook, highlighted. Here, hallways cannot be blocked. Parking spaces must be respected. Pets can't cause persistent noise. And complaints should go through you first, not straight to the police unless there's a real emergency. He read in silence for a while. His expression shifted from bored to surprised to annoyed. Look, I had heard some general complaints about noise on your floor, he admitted. But I didn't know it had escalated to this point, or that the same person making the complaints was also breaking this many rules. I nodded. I'm not asking you to punish her out of spite. I just want this to stop. I want to live in my own apartment without being treated like a criminal every time I wash dishes or talk on a call. He closed the folder slowly. Okay, here's what we're going to do. He explained the plan. First, he would file a formal report acknowledging my complaint and attach all the evidence. Then he'd send her a written notice reminding her of the rules she was breaking. If she ignored that, the next step would be to bring it up at the next condo board meeting. But as he flipped through the pages again, he changed his mind. You know what? This isn't just a private disagreement anymore. The police have been here multiple times. Other residents have been dragged into this drama in the group chat. It's affecting the whole building. I think we should address it in a general condo meeting. A general meeting, with neighbors, with her in the room. I felt a mix of satisfaction and dread. Are you sure? He nodded. If this keeps going, she's going to cause even more trouble, for you and for us. It's better to handle it transparently with everyone present. Rules are rules, right? The irony wasn't lost on me. Over the next days, he prepared the official notice. Every resident received an email and a printed note in their mailbox. Condominium meeting, subject, ongoing issues of coexistence, repeated external complaints, and non-compliance with building rules. The date and time were set, 1 week away. In the hallway, the tension grew thicker. People whispered more. Doors opened and closed a little faster when I walked by. My neighbor? Suddenly, she was quieter. No more loud comments in the corridor. No more passive-aggressive messages in the group chat. But her rug was still in the hallway. Her plant was still blocking the passage. Her car still parked over the line. Her dog still barking early in the morning. She had no idea that every one of those details was now a documented rule violation waiting to be read out loud. The night before the meeting, I laid everything on my table one more time. Timeline, photos, rules, police visits. This wasn't about revenge for the sake of it. It was about balance, about not letting someone bully everyone else because they thought the rules only applied to other people. For months, she had used fear and authority to control me. Now I was walking into a room where the authority would be the rulebook itself, not her phone calls. The day of the meeting, I arrived a few minutes early. The room slowly filled with neighbors. Some I'd never even seen before. People took their seats, murmuring, exchanging glances.
Then she walked in. Same stiff posture, same self-righteous expression. She sat down with her arms crossed like someone who was absolutely certain she was on the right side of whatever was about to happen. She still thought she was the hero of this story. She was about to find out she wasn't. Because that's when the manager cleared his throat, opened my folder in front of everyone, and started speaking.